Hey guys, this is Mr. Hanley coming to you with information about our first unit in freshman English. Our unit is going to be called Finding Common Ground. Today we're going to talk about our goals for that unit, just to get us started with week one of class. Our goals today are to discuss the essential question, which I'll share with you in just a second. We're going to make connections with some current events and look at some current popular music and actually a video to watch that, to make that connection. We're going to read some literature this coming week and in future weeks that addresses the essential question. And ultimately, we're going to craft our own response to that question in a personal essay, right? So our end of unit goal is for you to write a personal essay. That's where we're going in the next 5 or 6 weeks. So what is that essential question? It is on the board. How can we come together despite our differences? Let's talk about the word essential question for just a second. That word essential means key, right? It means that it sort of drives everything that we do. It is the essence of our course. So with whatever we're reading, whatever we're writing, whatever we're talking about, what we want to think about are all the ways that we're different, yet the ways that we come together, which I think is a really important thing to talk about, especially in the last 5 months, as we've dealt with, trying to come together in new ways through this pandemic. So to break it down, here are the kind of things I think we need to know about before we can start talking about our differences, right? One, who are we as individuals? That's definitely going to be something that we talk about, and you're going to do some writing about starting today. What are our differences? And not just the differences that we can see, but some that we can't see, and not even like big differences, but sometimes just differences between people, maybe even in the same families, like personalities. I know some of us are extroverts like me. I love to go out. I love to be around people. And some people are introverts. They love to stay in. They don't love to be around people. This has been really hard for me, by the way. As an extrovert, I want to be out of my house and to be around people. And then finally, what does it mean to come together? Well, it's certainly something new for us. That definition may have changed over the last 4 or 5 months of the COVID pandemic. So we're going to look at it, not just about the pandemic, but also sort of a historical perspective as well. To get started, I'm going to think about this quote from a really famous dude named Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations. And he said, "We may have different religion, different languages, different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race," right? Which I think is a really important way to start to think about this question. To get started with us today, we're going to look at something really popular that most of you have probably already seen. I have to admit, I have not seen Hamilton, but I've heard nothing but good things, and I like some of the music I've heard. So to show you this, I'm going to show a quick tab. If you click on the picture that says Duel, you're going to get this link right here. And this is some background information about Hamilton and Burr. Most of you know this already, but just in case you don't, the story is all about a deadly rivalry, right? I have that highlighted on the screen, where Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton ultimately ended up hating each other. And here's a picture on the screen of them preparing to have a duel, right? A duel is when two guys, or ladies, I guess, would hold pistols to each other from 10 paces and fire them. And this was considered a really sort of like gentlemanly way, a really reasonable way to settle differences. Obviously, it's a pretty extreme way to settle differences. But I think we also know that it's still a way that some people settle their differences today. But you know what? We can read all of this, but I think since this is Hamilton and we have the music, we need to listen to some of it. So this is from Hamilton. It's called "The World Was Wide Enough." We're going to listen to about the first 3 or 4 minutes of it, just so you can get the story.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 things you need to know. Number 1, go test the person. I'm ready with you, and that's sign 1. Number 2, Hamilton ride with the street. Daniel Perry, the doctor had me. Number 3, I watched Hamilton examine the terrain. I wish I could tell you what was happening in his brain. This man is poisoned by political pursuits. Let's dispute die and no one shoots. Number 4, Hamilton to first position, looking to the world like a man on a mission. This is a soldier with a marksman's ability. The doctor turned around so he could have deniability. 5, now I didn't know thinks of the time. Innocent thoughts, son died, is that why? He examined his blood with suffering. I watched to see the fire fully fiddled with the trigger. Confession time, here's what I got. My fellow soldiers will tell you I'm a terrible shot. Number 8, your last chance to negotiate. Send in your second seal, they can set the record straight. They won't teach you this in your classes, but look it up. Hamilton was wearing his glasses. Why? If not to take deadly aim, it's Emily. The world will never be the same. I had only one thought before the slaughter. This man will not make it worth it. Number 9, look him in the eye, ain't no higher. Summon all the courage you require. Then count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Number 10, taking fire.
I imagine that so it feels more like a memory. This is where it gets me. On my feet, several feet ahead of me. I see coming where I go, I fire my gun on every tree. Maybe the last place I ever see. It's time to go away my son. How do you remember me?
So I wanted to stop there where you could see Hamilton as he is about to die saying, is this the way I really want to be remembered? He says that Aaron Burr was both his first friend and his greatest enemy. These are two men that were really similar. They were actually both born wealthy, but in very different places, and grew to hate each other. And it's a really good story. You should go back and read that tab. And ultimately, their differences were settled with gunfire. So a couple other pop culture references that I wanted to show you. Here we have a couple murals. The one on the top that says Black Lives Matter is actually from Indianapolis. That's on Indiana Avenue, just on the northwest side of downtown. The one on the bottom is Back the Blue, and that is on a street in Tampa, Florida. And I'm not going to say a lot about those other than just to tell you, and you probably know this, that here is certainly one way that people have both been separated and have come together despite their differences that you've seen this summer. A couple other things to think about. We know that coming up in November, we have the 2020 election with Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump, who are both the presumptive nominees for their parties. And, you know, there's been a lot of divisiveness, a lot of ways that people aren't together about that. What are some ways that we have been together about that, especially in the last 4 or 5 months of COVID? And so I'm going to ask you now, as you've thought about some of those things, you've got some introductory material there, and as we prepare to read and write, I'm going to ask you to answer these 3 questions, and this is your first big journal entry for the year. So please read the instructions further down on this Canvas page to tell you how to do that. And your 3 questions will be, who are we? What are our differences? And what does it mean to come together? As always, I'm going to ask that you use complete sentences. In fact, a couple good paragraphs would be really ideal to get these done. I think you probably need to write 1 paragraph for each one of these questions. I don't know who you are as writers. I'm looking forward to reading these, so please do your best. And remember our essential questions: how can we come together despite our differences? Great chatting with you today. I look forward to seeing you in class if you're coming in person next week. If you are virtual, please don't hesitate to reach out with more questions and read through our Canvas modules to get the rest of the information for this week's classes. Have a great weekend.